Okay, this one is about the roadmap and engaging with the team more to understand what we're working toward. This has actually been brought up a few times, but more so recently by different people in the team. In the beginning, I just pointed them to the direction page, and Kai, I know you just updated the direction page, but that's not really kind of what they're looking for. I think these calls are super useful. The monthly call is super useful. We do need to get that back, but is there anything else that we are doing currently that we can promote or that we should start doing?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'll say is that, direction and roadmap probably still aren't set in stone or clear yet, is probably part of the reason why we're not, there's sort of nothing to share there, or nothing that we could share sort of reliably. Um, so that's maybe the first thing that I said. The second, and as part of that, I think one of the things that I'd like to do is, and Pedro and I have talked about this, is get to a point where we get epics done and fleshed out and thought out enough that engineering can take them over and own them. And I think that'll help, one, them understand the roadmap, because we'll be more in state in terms of vision in those. And so they can sort of help build the pieces to get there. And then I think that'll also help with like planning and ownership and sort of all those things that'll go along with that. But I think that'll help with the roadmap to some extent. The other is the monthly, and yeah, we should figure out how to get that back on the calendar. I don't know what to do in terms of timing for that. Monthlies have been hit and miss when I had done them in another group, only because that group sort of showed up to every weekly meeting, and so a monthly was just a longer version of it. I think in here we should do something maybe more explicit, but I don't know if we have preferences on timing and how to, like, do we want to run 2 monthlies, or do we want to alternate them every other month for time zones, or if anyone's sort of thought about that.
I don't know about Andre's team and what time zones they're in, but like 5 p.m. Central Time is a sweet spot for my team. But somebody will always be left out. So having maybe 2 that day is not a bad idea.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we've tried only one, the last editions we did, but I'll be up to trying 2, because I do have some people like in Eastern Europe, not really APAC, but could probably attend that. But sorry, yeah, for the no, they'll probably attend the one more early, and then the one in the APAC would get later. It's tricky. I don't know really if my team will be affected by that. The one I have it depends on how early the first one will be. Because so Kai, for example, this time that we're having this call would work for my entire team except one, Samantha on Vancouver, which would take the APAC call. So I don't know. We could try 2. And I agree with you that in this group it would be more useful because we don't have frequent attendance on weeklies.
So that is very interesting, Andre, because my team is the opposite. So if Kai and Pedro, if you're able, we could have one in the morning and one in the evening, and they should both have pretty good turnouts instead of just 1 or 2 on one call and then a bunch on the other.
Yeah, that'd probably be my fear of 2. It would be the only thing would be that you would potentially, like the second call might, like one of the calls will feel like a lesser call, right? Because it'll have potentially fewer people. But I'm happy to do that. I think the other piece would be like when in the milestone is convenient for people. I think that's the other piece that I'm not sure. I don't necessarily have a preference. I know like the week leading into release and coming off of release are challenging, but like I don't know if that, I think historically they were done on the 1st of the month or around the 1st of the month. Is that still generally fine for most people?
If I remember correctly, I think we tried like in the later part of the month, like 20 somethings, which would then feed into the conversations about planning the next milestone. First of the month has the same effect, so that would be good anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, so yes to the monthly. I'm not sure when the best time it is, but I think because of the time zones, I think we should aim for just one meeting with the biggest overlap possible instead of two. And then to accommodate people that are not able to join, I think we should prepare the agenda beforehand so that everyone can read what we will be sharing or talking about, and that can contribute their own questions, their own topics, and yeah, so they can see them answered or discussed if they want, and then they can see the responses afterwards in the agenda or in the recording. I think what I was missing a little bit from the previous iteration of the monthly call was signaling to the team, like the monthly call is coming up, hey, participate with what you're thinking about with questions and things like that. It felt mostly like, at least the first half of the agenda felt like something that could be previously recorded. Andre, are you taking a selfie? Or
Air conditioning.
Okay, you were doing like this, and your hand was away from the.
I was listening.
And yeah, so it felt like something that could be previously recorded as an icebreaker for the monthly call. It was mostly announcing, hey, we're doing this, we shipped this, this is what we're thinking, and it was taking away, I believe, precious time for discussion.
We could take turns preparing that video, so that's not always the same person. Just saying. But that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Well,
so basically,
first step is recovering the call, and then we get from there.
yeah, what I was going to say is I think the group conversation model works well in informing and inviting participation while also being mindful of everyone's time. And if we're able to do that with a good time of advance, I think it would be beneficial for anyone wherever they are, or if they're not able to join on that day. Yeah. And then what I was going to say about engaging with the team, I don't know if this addresses the concerns that you heard, Michelle, about the roadmap, but would it help if everyone just knew, like from Kai, myself and others that want to contribute, basically, hey, this is what we're thinking about, like this could be a good bet, this may be a good bet, but we're not sure. So would that help, or is it just they want to know, like, this is what we're going to do, like 90% sure?
No, I don't think it's that we have to be sure. I think that they would really appreciate that. So I think that's one part of it. And then I think the other part of it is like, what's the future of this? Like, I've got this iteration that I need to work on, this milestone, but what's it going to be in 5 milestones? And epics do a really good job of that, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we work on an issue as like, let's try this out for the first step. And then in our heads, we're like, but if this first step is successful, oh, the things we can do. And so I think it's kind of both of those things. Like, of what we're working on right now, what is it going to look like in a year or shorter? And then kind of what you said, like, what do we not know about that we're going to be working on soon, maybe, or what are we thinking about? I think we're probably fine to move on if if we're all okay with that. Over to Andre.
Okay. So my next point, so something that we have historically always done, and with some fluctuating feedback, is setting the milestones on the issues themselves. And I've been on several calls where people be like, "Oh, it's going to be handled on 13.9," and then we give that disclaimer. Actually, it's aimed at 13.9, but until it has a deliverable label on, it's not really committed. And I understand that confusion. Like we were setting a milestone on an issue, and some of them roll over to the next milestone after that. So thinking about that, I was wondering about, I think other groups do this. I might have taken that idea out of them implicitly, which is to set a label indicating what's our targeting, what's the milestone we're targeting, what's the milestone we're aiming at, and only put a milestone when we're actually setting it as a deliverable and we want to be working on it. So there are probably going to be some exceptions like SLOs, performance work, security work that really are more strict planning or scheduling. But for the overall work, we'll be using something like not setting the milestone. What do you think about it? Just a crazy idea. I don't really feel incredibly strong about it, but I thought it would be worth discussing. Peter?
Yeah, mine is almost like a read-only. Yeah, like that label that you were suggesting, that doesn't exist today, or does it? The target milestone?
I don't think so.
Okay.
The candidate label exists today. That's the one that other teams use. That Michelle
Which one?
mentioned. It's candidate, and then the milestone numbers is the one that the other teams
Okay.
use.
Okay. Yeah. And also, I've also seen Next Up. I don't know if anyone uses it.
Yeah, I like specifying the milestone because sometimes we do 2 in advance or something like next up. It's just like upcoming. So it's good to have granularity to kind of aim them at specific targets. I like the candidate. It's kind of just rewording. Kai?
Yeah.
My question is more broad. I've seen
Yeah.
other teams that do this. I guess, are you trying to solve a team problem, or are you thinking of solving an external problem? I guess I'm trying to understand what you're trying to do, because I guess I will. It's probably leading in the sense that I don't like the candidate label, because I think it's incredibly challenging to like have yet another label on issues that needs to be filtered on top of sort of still filtering for like milestone and other things, because some things will just already be locked into milestones, and so it becomes like one more thing to try and like use in the filter bar. But I guess I'm trying to figure out like what the communication to external parties, I don't know, I feel like I'm less concerned about, but I guess I'm trying to figure out if you or if this is like a team or planning thing that you want to try and figure out how to make better.
It's mostly external. This happened on a working group call. And I think historically we've had sometimes users or customers following certain issue and it just gets rolling over. So that could happen too. So it's mostly external that triggered this conversation more than internally. For me, filtering by milestone and filtering by a label. So by the time that we're grabbing the issues to set weights on and put them deliverable to see which ones are deliverables, the way we filter them would just change from milestone specifically to having that label. So internally, it doesn't make a huge difference. It's mostly external. Michelle, you have some thoughts?
Sorry, yeah. So I took this as completely like just our own engineering and total processes, because Andre's right. We run a lot of reports on targeted milestones, and they always come with that caveat, and people seem to never remember that. And so we do reports sometimes weekly and sometimes monthly, depending on what the report is on. And in those reports, it'll be like, okay, but you had 15 things scheduled last week, and now there's only 2 things scheduled. And it's like, yeah, because we went through planning and we kicked out 13 of them, and that's what the decrease is. So they're not very valuable. So that would help. But the other thing I wanted to mention is I keep a personal GitLab project to like organize my life here at GitLab. And I always have a planning issue open with things that I'm not comfortable assigning a milestone to that I still want to bring up in the planning issue. And so that's really just one internal little small thing that would go away.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about triaging where we're doing priority and severity, and then putting a milestone on it. And it's indicating that it's targeted at, but most often we have so many things to work on that we remember the snowball conversation we had a couple of months ago, which was basically we were just postponing bugs on, and it's just like a snowball growing in front of us. And then Kai started putting things on the backlog, which helped a lot because you were being more honest, putting it in the backlog than just rolling them over. That's part of the solution to that problem. This would be a second approach to make it clearer that we're not fully committed. It's just an aspirational thing. Do you feel like it's something we could try for a while, or no?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it sounds like there would be benefit to people to try it. And so I'm happy to try and adjust. I will say that because I just put stuff in a milestone. That's how I deal with Michelle's list problem, is I just put them in the milestone. And then when we get to planning, then we go through and we say, well, we don't actually have room for all of this. Because and part of the reason I do that is so like right now I'm looking at like the 13.9 board. Because what I've been doing the last couple of days is I keep pulling up the 13.9 board and I'm looking and I'm going, okay, what's all in here? Because like Michelle sent, capacity in and Andre sent capacity in. And I'm looking, I'm going, well, there's a lot in here. So like I can start to immediately sort of prune that list back out and just like take 13.9 and either kick stuff to 13.10 or move it to backlog very quickly sort of once that. And I guess the label would work similarly as long as we were incredibly consistent about applying it, versus like a label plus a milestone is sort of like feels challenging. Like some stuff might say candidate 13.9 and some stuff might say milestone 13.9, and we don't support or filtering anywhere. So like I can't actually see a list that has both of those things in it. And so I worry that my fear is that it becomes harder because you've got two things sort of indicating when you might do something versus a single piece there.
That's true. And I can even see a situation where we have disjoint milestones. Candidate for 13.9, milestone 13.10. Who wins? Milestone, I guess. But we could set that as a rule. But
if we
what do you
did
think?
prune though, if we made that's the habit, because I don't think any of us are used to that. And by the way, we forgot the last two pruning sessions that we were supposed to have on the agenda. But if we did get better about that, I guess it would be okay to just put all of it, because I think part of why this is important for us is because our milestones are crazy and we never get to all of it. But the other thing that I use, like this label, if I were to use it, would be to remind myself that if it does not make it, I need to add a comment indicating why it's going to get pushed back. So if we just got better about pruning throughout the month, then this may be a non-issue too. Maybe an alternative.
That's a good point. Okay, so maybe we can just keep it in the back of our minds for now. Don't execute anything, just get better at pruning, and we'll see if this comes back again. But for now, it feels like there's some side effects that could lead to more confusion. Yeah, getting better at pruning. That seems like to be the takeaway, right? All right.
Yeah, I think it's that. And I think it's also like, I would say, feel encouraged to put, if you think it's something that needs to come up for 13.9, like part of, or like for the next milestone, put it in that milestone, right? And then, like we did for 13.8, we will lock the milestone at some point and we'll say, this is what it is. And this is the deliverable list. And what we did last month is, as soon as we were done with those calls, everything that didn't make that cut either moved to 13.10 or moved to a backlog, right? Like, and so I think as long as we're sort of diligent about making sure that we draw that cut line and get them out of the milestone, then that helps. That at least helps keep the milestone crazy. But yeah, we've got to make sure we prune the list and don't get to the situation where they're like, hey, there's this issue that's got missed since 13, and everyone's like, oh yeah, we just never scheduled it. We didn't actually mean to do it. We just left it there. I think the orphaned issues are the problem with like putting things in a milestone, but as long as you can stay on top of that, then it should be okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the conversation, people. Kai, go for the next point.
Yeah, get the last one. And I know there was resistance at first. I am interested in proposing again that we try to have individual contributors provide a weekly status update in the planning issue. I know the resistance before was like, well, that should be happening in the actual issues we're working on, or sort of these other things. And I will say, I have not seen many, if any, individual contributors on even a slightly regular basis comment on any of the issues that are being worked on. And it tends to come up like, versus being like, hey, everything's okay here, or hey, I haven't looked at this one, but I'm planning on looking at this one, next week. We don't even see sort of like those kind of things. And I'll say like what I saw this week was sort of, hey, we're not going to get to this, like, let's reshuffle the deck, and have someone else take a look at that. But arguably, given things have to be merged by tomorrow in a best case world, and actually into production by tomorrow to make the release, like shuffling the deck today doesn't help us. But if we had known 2 weeks ago that like something was coming up, we might have better done that. And I don't think that like, I don't know if that's regular, but I think one of the things that like as a forcing function of having to provide a status update about every single issue that is assigned to you that has the deliverable label, even if you haven't looked at it, is that you, like, I think as an individual contributor, you're aware that like, hey, I've got that list of 5 things, and maybe it's looking more and more unreasonable that I'm going to get to those 5 things, and I can like say something sooner. Yeah, I know it's more overhead and potentially creates like a second area where this happens, but I think it would help me understand. I'll also say like, I put the example in about suggested change commit messages, which like was a carryover from 13.7. And so I would have expected that had like shipped in 13.8, and then there was like an ask for a docs update, and it was like, oh, well, docs aren't coming until this other thing comes, and there's a feature flag. And so I went and looked at the issue, and like, we don't say the word feature flag anywhere in the issue. No one ever brought that up. Like, even when it didn't make 13.7, sort of no one ever brought that up. And like, that's probably a special case because like, I know Jacques out on like paternity leave and sort of all these other things, but like, that would have been something very easy to communicate in like a small status message. It's like, hey, this is going to go with like 13.8 and it's going to have a feature flag. And like, we would have just known that then versus sort of having to like piece together all these different sources of information. So I don't know, I'm floating it again because I would like to see more feedback from people.
Yeah, I added a comment in there just to clarify. I think this particular milestone was especially anomalous. Most of the team started 2 weeks in. We didn't even do the mid milestone check-in that we usually do. And you're right, like you don't see the ICs doing that because that's not a habit that we've cultivated along the months. So, but it's something we can start doing. Michelle, do you want to say anything?
No, I think we actually did agree on this the first time we talked about it. You and I were both like, yeah, sure. I mean, we could try it. And then Pedro was like, oh, there's a lot of updates, and we were like, yeah, we'll let's evaluate it. We'll see. So yeah, we can
Let's
try
take action.
that. All week the team has been talking about this too, what their cadence will be. Yesterday somebody was like, it would really be helpful if I was able to do this daily. You think anybody would get mad at me? And I was like, no, I don't think anybody would get mad at you. So if you want to do, Kai, if you want to get us like an example template, like ideally this is exactly what it would look like. I'm at this, I worked on this week, and there's a feature flag, and this one does not have a feature flag. And if you want to get us that, we'll just share it in the channel and start promoting that.
Yeah, I think,
sorry,
I was gonna say, more than the template, I can share a couple of like the editor planning issues, and you can sort, and like, I think maybe you just look at that and see sort of like how that's gone. Like, week over week in terms of like what you see people comment on. But yeah, I can do that.
So my question was kind of that, do you prefer updates on the issues themselves or updates on the progress/planning issue, which we eventually link to the issue so it would come up as a reference, as I mentioned? Preference?
My preference is the planning issue. I think that's in conflict with what we would consider the issue to be the single source of truth, but I would say the planning issue is a case of managing up. Sometimes you have to, and I say up in the loose sense that like this is a communication to me or to other stakeholders, like the four of us, or some in terms of people who are concerned with how the progress might be going in the milestone. And so one of the things that you do when you communicate up is sometimes you optimize the format for the person who has to consume it. And so in this case, I'm asking for it to be optimized for me consuming it versus like people who might be following individual issues. Yeah.
And like I said, if the format includes a link to the original issue, it shows up as a system node. So in essence, you tie it up with a single source of truth. Okay.
Yeah, and I think at least in the beginning, it could be good to have the status updates by the whole team happening in the planning issue, so that the team members also learn from one another and get inspired about how others are reporting on their updates, and could possibly help share knowledge across the team. And like someone might have solved a similar problem previously at GitLab or another company. So I think at least in the beginning, the planning issue could be a good way to start for the whole team.
I talked about this yesterday too. It's also a lot easier for other people to recognize what your limitations are. And kind of what I mean by that is, like, for example, this is my list of things that I need to get finished this week. And it is a page long. And there's some of these on here. There's no way I'll finish by Friday, but I think I can do it. But I just saw y'all's faces when you looked at it and your jaw dropped. And so I think that you probably all know that that's not going to happen. And so
Yeah.
it's a good place for accountability to just kind of say, I noticed you're working on 5 things this week. Do you really feel like that's going to happen?
That's a good point. Just a final question. Do you feel like it would be useful to set a consistent day on the week to have this update be done for everyone, like every Friday, every Monday, or should everyone just do whenever they feel like it? Because I remember editor did it on Fridays, was it?
I'm scrolling the editor issue right now, and one of the things people do is they put the date at the top. It looks like there's a combination of like Fridays and Mondays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and all of the days. I think it's like a once a week thing. I think I would be sad. I think like as a first iteration, like if we feel like we need to say like do it on this day to help
recommended,
make it a forcing function, great. If we feel like, hey, you need to do it once a week is maybe a lower scary thing, and as long as people at least do it once a week, then like that would be okay too.
Okay. Gotcha. Get that format up to us and we'll circulate that with the team. And we're at time. Kai, capacity is delayed. I'm hoping I'm getting it to you today, even if I don't sleep, but today I'll get you everything in there so we can get it everything. Just like Michelle, it's a crazy week for us. We're doing a bunch of things for the team, but we're definitely gonna get it on time, hopefully. So apologies for the delay.
No problem.
Okay. Anything else? Right. Already waving. Bye.